Today I'm sharing my recipe of the week. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining. For those of you who don't know me or catching the replay, my name is Ailey Swift and I'm the chef and owner of Simply Gourmet. At Simply Gourmet, we are all about making your life easier. So whether we're cooking for our busy clients during the week or catering your event, we've got you covered. This is really exciting. I first want to say happy Father's Day. Most of you have maybe heard over the years about my mom and the inspiration that she is with me during my whole cooking career. However, my dad has inspired me in the kitchen as well. And so I'd like to pay a little bit of homage to him today on this special day. Let's talk about this recipe because it has got some history. First of all, make sure that you tag any friends that you know might be interested in getting my recipe of the week and following me on here live with extra tips in the kitchen. So tag their names below or share this post. This recipe literally dates back, I'm gonna say 20 years, which makes me feel a little bit old. But it was back in the day, my very early 20s, Food Network was just coming around. We didn't have Google, and so where I got my inspiration was through magazines. So I saw this delicious looking recipe, I tore it out of the magazine and kept it in my little repertoire of dishes to go to. And it's followed me around ever since for a few reasons. A, it's delicious, that helps, but it's also very easy to make, quick, definitely under 30 minutes. Usually has very little ingredients, so usually you'll find you've got these ingredients on hand already. And it freezes really well. So when I started my personal chef business about 10 years ago, I brought this on board right away. It was a go-to recipe for my personal chef clients and is really versatile in how you can shake it up. So without further ado, let's get right down to it. What did I make last week for dinner? I made what I call pork chipotle chili. So it's a chili, not maybe a summer dish you might make, but it's so simple and not a chili that needs to sit on the stove for a long time that it easily can be enjoyed in the summer months. If you don't like or don't eat pork, not a problem. You can make this with chicken as well, so keep that in mind. Just scaling back to my dad and the inspiration on this, chili was actually one of the things that Dad loved to make and was responsible for. So that's why it's a bit of a homage, not this particular chili recipe. His is much more complicated with like a list of ingredients this long, but equally as delicious. So the fun part about this particular dish is what I ended up doing was kind of multitasking. So I picked up pork tenderloin, which is so inexpensive, which is amazing. I picked up extra, double the pork tenderloin, and then while I was prepping the dinner for that evening, I decided to focus on a meal that I could make the next day for dinner using the same protein. So I took aside an extra pork tenderloin and I marinated it in a bunch of Korean ingredients. And for those of you who follow me on Instagram, you may have seen that post. I did a cauliflower pork tenderloin Korean bowl with a poached egg on it. Again, if you're not following me on Instagram, do it. Simply Gourmet YYC. You'll see that beautiful, gorgeous picture. So that's a whole other video to share perhaps. But what was great was that it was already marinating in the fridge overnight, and so that portion of it was done, and so that dinner was very easy to pull together the next day. Let's get back to the pork chipotle chili. So really all you need to do is chop up your pork. I've got this recipe, first off, I've got the recipe on my website, so head over there, simplygourmet.biz. I will definitely post the link below after the live feed, but I'm just going to walk you through this recipe really quickly because it's so simple. We've got a few spices. It is chipotle, which means it's spicy. However, you can easily substitute smoked paprika, give you the same effect if you're not into spicy. We love spice. So it's got chipotle chili powder. We've got a little bit of paprika, cumin, garlic powder, and salt. That's your spice blend, and that's going to get coated onto the pork. So you just cube up the pork pieces, bite size, and then mix it with the spice mixture, set that aside. Then the rest of the ingredients are pretty minimal. I have a couple of different ways I've made this. I'm going to share with you the way I did last week, and then I'll tell you a little bit of a trick that you can do if you want to, if you have different ingredients. So we take an onion and garlic. I mean, those are the two key ingredients to build any sort of recipe, in my opinion. So saute those off in a nice pan. Make sure also, before you do that, you are gonna wanna get some color on that pork. Remember, caramelized protein equals flavor. So you're gonna quickly brown off all your pork and then set that aside. Then put in the onions and the garlic. Then we're gonna add in any remaining of that spice mixture, because usually you might find when you make spice mixtures, that seems to be more than you need. So there's usually a little bit of extra, so we're gonna throw that in along with some tomato paste. Cook that down a little bit. You always want to cook off tomato paste when you're adding it to a recipe, so kind of saute it off and get off that tinny taste. And then we're going to hit it with a couple of different options. I like beer in it. I don't like beer, but I like beer in this dish. You can choose whatever beer you like. It doesn't have to be a fancy beer. You could just throw in a Budweiser. Obviously, it's not gluten-free. You can get gluten-free beers out there, but quite frankly, I would just skip the beer altogether if you're worried about the gluten in beer. But yeah, I throw in a bit of beer and let that cook down and just reduce the alcohol. And then I threw in crushed tomatoes, some cider vinegar. I always use cider vinegar when I'm using tomatoes. You need that acid to help brighten up the dish. Then you want to maybe just take in some salt, depending, I tend to use unsalted tomatoes, so you're going to want to season it a little bit. But throw your pork back in and literally let it simmer for about 10 minutes. The pork cooks really fast, and you don't want to overcook this because then you're going to get dry, tough pork. So maybe 10 minutes, let that simmer. Then I added in my peppers. I used a couple of different colors just to add some different colors and make it look a little prettier. But you can, again, do whatever you want. And then let that simmer just for another 5 minutes or so. And really, that's it. There's not a lot of ingredients. If you're not paleo and you like beans, you can throw in some pinto beans. That's what the original recipe called for. Oh, and I also added in beef broth, So beef broth, beer, crushed tomatoes, and then let that simmer all up. And the flavor actually doesn't need a long time to develop. It's super delicious and was definitely, I looked at the clock, under 30 minutes. Like I said, it freezes really well. Yummy garnishes. Cilantro, I love. Green onions, love. Avocado, yummy. If dairy isn't an issue, cheese or sour cream is equally a lovely option to go on it. And like I said, it freezes super well, so that's a great dish that you can make, maybe double the batch, throw it in, and take it out midweek. I said I was gonna offer you a couple of different options. The original recipe actually asked for salsa. So if you have salsa on hand, but not crushed tomatoes, then that works really well. All you need is your broth and or beer, and then you throw in the salsa to add the tomatoey component and add a little bit more depth of flavor, and then that's it. You don't even have to have the tomato paste. You don't have to have the crushed tomatoes. So if you just happen to have an extra jar of salsa in your fridge, which quite honestly we usually do as well, but I didn't this particular day, which is why I opted for the other route, then it's done. You could add in other vegetables, zucchini would be really lovely in this, but you don't have to. It's really flavorful. Pork seems to get a bad rap, I find, and that's usually because it's overcooked. Sous vide is a great way to cook your pork tenderloin. Make sure that you don't overcook pork. You want a little bit of pink in there. And I think that's the biggest mistake people make, is that they're worried about keeping their pork undercooked. And quite frankly, it's very safe. You don't have to worry about that anymore. And it's way more delicious if it has a bit of pink in it. So cook it to medium. So if you think of a steak and the color of a steak, medium rare versus medium, it's just got a hint of pinkness to it. So when we cook pork, for instance, in the oven at a nice high heat of 425 for maybe 10-15 minutes at the most, and that's really all it needs. But if you have a sous vide tool, that's an excellent way to cook pork. Again, this is a super inexpensive dinner, so if you're looking for inexpensive, time-saving dishes, the pork chipotle chili is really your go-to, and has been for 20 years with me, so it's got to be doing something right. I will once again post the recipe on my underneath here in the comments once I'm done the video. Again, please share or tag a friend so that they can keep following me as well. And I will post my, which I haven't shared yet, my Instagram picture of the dish so that you can see how it turned out. All right, guys, let's talk about Wednesday. Wednesday, I'm gonna kind of switch up things a little bit because I want to have a conversation. We've spoken a lot about time-saving tips, and the other big one here is inspiration, people lacking it. I catered an event last night and was chatting with my client, and that was one of the things that she mentioned to me is inspiration seems to be the biggest problem. What's for dinner? That literally is a tagline in the personal chef industry that we use. We solve your what's for dinner problems. So if you want to hire me to solve all those problems, simplygourmet.biz. But if you want to do it yourself, I want to have a conversation about this inspiration. And it's going to be a tough conversation because I'm going to put out some really reality checks that we need to face about why we're suffering from a lack of inspiration. So it could be exciting, more of a conversation, hoping for more feedback below so that we can converse back and forth on this. Coming at you live Wednesday to talk about your inspiration problems and how we get them solved. If you want to find out or if you want to inspire me on future posts, I really want you to comment below and let me know, what can I do for you? What do you want to hear? Tell me what is your problem and how I can solve it will be mine. Thanks for tuning in, guys. This was fun. Again, I'll post the recipe, so try and make it for the week. Super delicious. Happy Father's Day to all those men out there, and have a great weekend.